May I suggest that time is running short, we go on to the famous fossil thing, sir, because I'm sure the audience, you know, this...
It's a piece of comic relief, rather, the fossil thing.
As you have said, Professor, this title fossil has almost entered the international vocabulary since you used it in the context you did. And as I understood from reading your works over the past few days, nights, I should say, there are fossils and there are also peoples in the archaic sense. I said earlier, we seem to be in both. We're both a fossil with the Parsis in India, and when it comes to archaism, we have a link with the Norwegians, the Greeks, the Turks, and the Irish. Well, I would say this, at least in the archaic angle, I've got associations from childhood. As far as the Parsis, I'm afraid, I've no acquaintance.
They're very interesting people.
Professor, may I say this?
Yes.
I'm not a historian. Your thesis has been challenged by historians of great eminence and writers. There's quite a vocabulary of reply to, they call it in various terms, the Toynbee thesis, the Toynbee heresy.
Don't I know it? Yes.
And I understand you're going to write...
Ibn, Toynbee heresy, yes.
Yes, Ibn, the heresy. There's also the professor and the fossil.
Yes.
And
there's another one, yes, with two books we had.
Yes, and there's also Judaism, fossil, or faith, something like that.
Yes.
I would only ask you, I'm a diplomat representing my country, and my experience in this field is contemporary times. I've not studied deeply history as you have. But I would ask you, in all objectivity as historian, sir, if I may, our concept of our life down the ages, I can sum it up in a verse from Psalms. It is Lo amut ki echye va'asaper ma'aseka. I shall not die, but I shall live. A fossil doesn't die, but he also doesn't live. Here we part ways. And as we live, and through our survival down the ages, we see the hand of Providence. We have the sense of survival under Providence, and we move ahead as we've prayed to spiritual fulfillment. Here lies the basic difference between us. You say to us, you did not die. Why is not clear. But you did not live. No continuity in terms of creative life and thought. You've sort of slipped out of the stream of civilization. Some remote island got stuck there. Now and then your voice is heard as it shrieks of the passing ships. And we say, no, we have been in the stream. We've been in the stream in a distinctive sense. In our survival, in our prayer and our hope, in our attachment to our land, and in our belief in the fulfillment of immortal prophecy. But that is at issue, and I'm not a historian. As I say, others are debating that with you. But I would ask you, as a modern Israeli, representing my country, and one who has seen the country come to life and independence, from the academic historical analysis point of view, as you scan the canvas of history, Professor, is there no significance in the following facts which cannot be denied? Number one, of the ancient peoples of the Middle East, we are the only one living in continuity today in the Middle East, speaking the same language, practicing the same religious faith.
Mention the Parsis.
Well, I'm talking of the Middle East. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, whom you devote much attention. He and Rabbi Akiva and Bar Kokhba, they came to life. They could live with us. They would not find a dichotomy which snapped them asunder. There's a continuity of experience. I'm just raising this for your attention, sir. Secondly, that after this passage through the valley of death down the ages, and you yourself have described in your book, you caucus the ashes of diaspora, as we've come to life in our time, we've come to life without rancor. Despite all that has passed between us and our Arab neighbors, I can assure you, and you will see this if you come to Israel, there is no rancor, there's no hatred. There's grief, but there's a hope for peace every day. And there's a confidence it will come. Nor is there rancor to nations across the world and systems and doctrines whom we have met and had a dialogue, at times a very serious one and accompanied with tragedy for us down the ages. This very vitality of life and survival without rancor, this too I would submit has a certain significance in terms of historical analysis. Thirdly, after these thousands of years we've assembled our people from 70 lands. The Yemenites from the remote deserts of Yemen who were cut off for over 2,000 years from the stream of civilization, with the cave dwellers of Morocco, Jews from East, West Europe, Nazi death camps, the remote hinterland of India. They've all come together and they found a common nationhood spontaneously. Has that link got no vitality? Was that a fossil? Is that how a fossil reacts? All these particles of the fossil come together and they feel one. I'm just finishing, sir. Finally, the question of democracy. After all this experience, we are the only viable democracy in terms of the Israel-Arab complex in the area. And finally, the fact is that today, many new nations from Africa and Asia turn to us for guidance, for cooperation. And they find in our experiment, in our enterprise, they find something which draws them. There's a link. So we do have a message for the world, and not, sir, as you've suggested, that our message ceased sometime 2,300 years ago. And may I just finish by saying, what I'm trying to say is being expressed very vividly. Professor Lewis Mumford in his Conduct of Life. He says the binding force of an ethical force based on purpose has been dramatically confirmed in the history of the Jew. Its practical consummation in our time perhaps merits our special note. We believe that our survival is an index of the supremacy of spiritual over material value. We believe in all humility and thanks to a grateful providence that it has a relevance to the broad experience of mankind today. I would ask you, sir, in all respect, whether you don't think all these elements have any basis on which you could possibly reconsider your concept of us as a fossil, non-creative, which suddenly fell out, neither died nor lived for the past 2,300 years.
It's rather a curious point about this word fossil, that I've never used it of the Jewish people alone. I've always used it of a whole class of peoples. This is rather an academic point, really, and sorry to inflict my theories of history on you. I've tried to map out a kind of picture of civilizations, and I found that there were several generations or series of civilizations, some of which died out perhaps several thousand years ago, others are alive today. But I did find that of the civilizations that died out quite a long time ago, certain exceptional communities, the Jews, the Parsis, one branch of the Buddhists, certain rather obscure Christian sects, the Monophysites and Nestorians, I don't know if you know about them, anyway, were surviving representatives of a civilization whose other members had become extinct in the sense not that human beings ever become extinct, but they become absorbed into other civilizations, races, peoples, and so on. None of the other people whom I label as fossils has ever complained. I thought this pointing out that these people had this great survival power is rather complimentary, and the only complaints I've had have been from Jews, and they've complained as if I'd stuck the Jews with this label alone and not the other people. I don't know why this is, particularly. I think a fossil is... all our labels are more or less imperfect. It's quite true. It doesn't convey the idea that communities surviving from a previous civilization are, after all, still alive, because human beings that are surviving are alive, and they do things. And that's quite right about this. I've got a longish section about this word fossil in a forthcoming volume of Reconsiderations, or Second Thoughts, that I'm publishing, which is a great deal about Jewish history, as a matter of fact. It's coming out on the 4th of May. Sorry to advertise my own works. I said, could we take some word for a living creature? Just when I was thinking about this, off South Africa, they found an antediluvian fish called the coelacanthus. Could I substitute the word coelacanthus for fossil? Would that be any more attractive to people I'd label fossil? I thought probably it wouldn't, and after all, the coelacanthus is a very archaic form of life, and the ambassador tried to write present-day Jews are by no means archaic. They're in the full stream of life. But isn't it true that from the time of the Roman wars, really, in the time of Philo of Alexandria, or in the time when the Christian Acts of the Apostles were written, you see the position of the Jewish communities in the Greco-Roman world. They were, as they are today in the Western world, they were living very much in the stream, as the ambassador says, of the common life of that civilization. Under the shock of the Roman wars, I do think that the Jewish communities withdrew into a kind of shell. They gave up writing and speaking Greek and went back to Hebrew, or rather Aramaic perhaps. And for many centuries they remained encased, partly by their own will, partly by the bad treatment they received from Christians, especially Western Christians, I think. It's only since the Napoleonic time, almost, you might say, except in some very early enlightened countries like Holland and Tuscany, which began doing this in the 16th and 17th centuries, that the doors were open to the Jews and they were brought back into the full stream of life. The tragic point about this, again, is that I think on both the Jewish side as well as on the Gentile side, there have been certain reservations about forming a single community. I suppose Jews feel that the Gentiles haven't really entirely received them into the Gentile community, and Gentiles feel that the Jews have not entirely come into the Gentile community. But comparatively, compared to the situation before, say, about 1800, the Jews in present times have, of course, become part of the general stream of life and have played this enormous part in it.
Defossilize, sir?
Yes, you can defossilize just as you can defrost a car. And,
that's very interesting.
Yes. I've never denied this, and I haven't found another word to express what I mean. This is a particular category of communities, and from the, so to speak, scientific or sociological point of view, it does need a name. Find me a better name and I'll use it.
Professor, what about the points I raised earlier? I think, do you accept that these considerations of vitality I mentioned earlier, related to Israel's return and restoration, have they anything to do with the defossilization? Are they signs for you, historically speaking, of a vitality?
I think, of course, that the Gentile Westerners invented nationalism, which I strongly dislike, and that the Jews caught this disease from the Western Gentiles, which is very unfortunate.
Well, it's been a long disease with us, and many physicians have tried to cure us down the ages. But we refuse to be cured. The point, Professor, what I mean is, I'm not talking now, I know that you're opposed to the modern state. You want a world state. Well, I mean, there are many people also in Israel who think that we must move to much more world cooperation without giving up on its independence. A different matter.
Yes, I agree.
What I'm saying is the attributes which have been shown now by the people in Israel, now not talking of the state in the formal sense.
No.
The attribute of survival, of vitality, of democracy, of lack of rancor, of sense of peace, of cooperation, of this growing pattern with new nations of the world. After 2,000 years of exile, do you think historically this has some significance?
But I've never denied that the Jews have always been alive, and I've never denied that I have criticized some forms of vitality that Israel has taken, but I've never denied the vitality.
But what I would say is this, that this creativity, and I take it right down to modern times, what I'm very happy about is that you agree today that the fossil has become defossilized. Now, the problem is not so much now finding alternative term for the fossil since it became a fossil till now, but finding a term for the new creature which is being defossilized. If I may say in conclusion, just on this point, I do hope, sir, before you pass another judgment, before your new book comes out, if possible, that you would visit Israel and weigh up the process of defossilization in your context and see this vitality and compare it in a historic span. and then let us have your conclusions. I hope you will be able to come, and I'm sure our people will be very happy to show you the country and to answer any questions. And we've no objection at all if you visit neighbouring countries and have a broad Middle Eastern view of the situation.
Thank you. Of course, vitality is not enough. Morality, let's come back to that. Morality,
well,
private vitality is grand.
On the morality issue, you yourself have agreed that we are like other peoples. That, again, can be looked into when you visit Israel.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Mendes.